Let's get started. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to The Nest. I'm Jim Chu, CEO of Untapped Global, and we're streaming live with entrepreneurs and investors from around the world and in Cape Town, South Africa. Usually we have a virtual pitch session online with Zoom, but we are in 2021, we are expanding that to create hybrid events where we have in-person events alongside the virtual events online. Why virtual? Why in person? The virtual is there so that we connect people across borders and provide more access to international investors, and for international investors to more easily meet local entrepreneurs. We have the in-person sessions because, you know what, we all want to meet each other at the end of the day. So we hope this goes well. Like I said, please give us feedback after this session on how we can improve this. This is our first time doing a hybrid session. For those of you joining us for the first time, the goal of The Nest is to connect international investors with frontier market entrepreneurs pitching exciting startups. Today, we have, not only because we're in Cape Town, but because we have investors who are interested in that investment thesis, we have South African companies going global. South Africa has some amazing startups, and many of whom can go overseas to the US and European markets, as well as the rest of Africa. So is that an investment thesis worth investing in? Well, I guess it depends on the entrepreneur, so the pressure's on Greg, pressure's on Nithen. So today, we have great partners hosting the event with us. We have Invest Africa. Elizabeth from Invest Africa, please say hi. We also have Endeavor, who has partnered with us on making this a successful in-country showcase. We have Allison Collier from Endeavor joining us here in the room. And we have Workshop 17, where we are. You can't see us online, but we have a beautiful view of Table Mountain here with a beautiful view of the harbor. So let's get started. But before we get going, please mute yourself if you're not talking online. But this is an interactive session. We want to hear from you. So use that chat box, make comments. Let's hear from your expertise. You can even invest. So use that chat box and get involved. And for those of you in the audience, if you look at the cards in your chair, there should be a QR code on the back of that card. And if you scan that, you will go to the Zoom link for this meeting. You can join it, put yourself on mute, and you can comment and chat and connect with others online around the world. Let's see if this works. So without further ado, let's go over to introduce the angels for today. Farhad, would you like to start?
Sure. Would you like an introduction?
Yes, please introduce yourself. And
sure. So my name is Farhad Masoudi. I'm an entrepreneur from Silicon Valley, although recently moved to Los Angeles. I started a company called Tubi about a decade ago, which has grown to become the largest free and ad-supported movie streaming service in the United States. We recently sold, about a year ago, we sold a company to Fox for $500 million.
And aside from the money, he's being very modest because every single millennial in the United States watches Tubi TV.
Okay. Thank you. Well, we have about 40 million monthly active users in the United States.
Congratulations.
I'm Catherine Young. I'm the managing partner of Grindstone Ventures. It's a female-led fund out of South Africa. And we've got a portfolio of about 70 companies now through Grindstone as an accelerator, and we actively invest. And very happy to be here. It's so awesome to have you in our country.
Thank you for bringing me back. And we have Daniel Kleinbaum.
My name's Dan Kleinbaum, currently based in Maputo, Mozambique. About 7 years ago, founded a company called Bionic. We connected businesses to mobile money networks. We started in Uganda, expanded it to about 7 markets across sub-Saharan Africa, scaled the team to about 20 people, and it was acquired by MFS Africa last year. So, started company through exit to acquisition. I'm envious of the folks that have built really big businesses too in the US, and it's good to be up on stage.
And congratulations on the exit.
Thank you.
And also being part of the African fintech ecosystem, which is an exciting space to be in.
It is.
I'm glad you can make it to Cape Town as well. All right, we're now on to the pitches and the entrepreneurs. Before I introduce them, they'll introduce themselves with the pitch. Just a few guidelines and rules. You have 5 minutes to pitch, 5 minutes, and we will cut you off. So please respect the time, and we'll make sure we have 15 minutes or so afterwards for questions and answers. So if you keep to the time, we'll make sure we can have a substantive discussion about your business with the angels. And again, I encourage everyone in the audience, please input your questions, input your comments, and we'll do our very best to read them out loud during the session. All right, without further ado, let me pass on the mic to our first presenter, who is Nithen Naidoo from Snode Tech, South Africa.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nithen Naidoo. I'm the CEO and founder of Snode. We live in this connected world, right? Where my shoes connects to my watch, connects to my phone. Everything connects to the internet, and we all connect to each other, right? Securing this heterogeneous architecture at internet scale is a challenge. You can't install your antivirus right on your smart TV. And what makes it worse is that signature-based detection, it may have worked in the 80s when you were trying to track hackers or kids in their bedroom. Today, you've got organized crime. You've got nation-state attacks. So more innovation within the cybersecurity space was needed. This is why we created Snode. Snode essentially does 3 things. Data fusion. We can take data from inside or outside your organization, be it the deep web, the dark web, and we create one single source of truth. We then give you a single pane of glass so that you can seamlessly navigate through this data at a click of a button. Second thing is we use machine-assisted analytics. Machine-assisted analytics essentially is going to crunch through the petabytes of data and tell you in real time the 1 or 2 things you need to respond. And lastly is response systems. So the same machines go out and they contain that threat. They make it harmless, giving you time to remediate and to respond appropriately. Let me give you an idea. So this is a client in SA, in the mining sector, ran our technology for 5 days, and the numbers you see on screen, as big as they are the number of attacks that we defended them against. This is with the existing security controls in place. And unbelievably, this is not even my numbers. This comes from a professional services firm, one of the big 4 audit firms, because they use our technology to perform IT security assessments in the MEA region. It's this kind of success that has taken us 6 continents, over 80 client environments, monitoring more than 5 million devices. So unknowingly, some of the world's largest mines run Snode. One of the largest online platforms in the world runs Snode. Largest IoT agri-tech, we were just discussing it now, plantation in the world runs Snode. Largest MVNO in South Africa, JSC's top 20 runs Snode. But that's not where it stops. In 2016, I wanted to show the power of this analytical capability. So I took Snode and I pointed it at social media data around the fees must fall movement. I wanted to predict when a group of students would turn violent. And knowing at any time that there was a violent outbreak, we found that the concentration of students was really low. And instead of telling you when a bunch of students would turn violent, we mistakenly
I'm going to stop you for a tiny second. Maybe you can switch your microphone to the other side so that when you turn to face this way, we don't lose your voice. Thank you. Perfect.
Right, so we don't have any direct competitors. I don't think it's fair to the guys on the screen to say we're direct competitors. But most clients compare us to the likes of Darktrace because we don't use signature-based detection. Rather, we use machine-assisted analytics. Also, a lot of Palo Alto, right? Because of the active defense component. Where I find we're most aligned is probably something like Polenta, because we exceed the bounds of cybersecurity and we can use technology to track terrorists, identify patient zero in a disease outbreak, or like help trafficking. We're led by a team of award-winning entrepreneurs and inventors, and we have about 50 people. Most recently, we won the most recent award we've got is from Enterprise Singapore Slingshot competition, where we're one of the top 100 deep tech firms in the world. My ask today is quite simple. We're an unprofitable company. I'm not really looking. But what I'm looking for is access to international markets. So I'm looking for a partner who can help me scale in an international market, who has channel distribution, existing client base, and that can help me leverage that. And for that, I'm willing to exchange value. Yeah.
So over to the angels. Let's hear your questions and comments.
I have a question. So can you tell me a little bit more about the technology you've built? I wasn't super clear exactly what's the core of the technology you built. So you tap into a stream of data and you use machine learning to detect patterns. Is that a?
Yeah. Actually use mathematics. Problem with machine learning is, especially with like supervised learning, it takes time. You need to explain to it what's normal for it to detect an anomaly. We find mathematics is faster, so it works straight out of the box. It doesn't take that time to actually learn anything. And then from there, we can detect anything. We detect, if you give me transactional data, I'll detect fraud. If you give me like HR data, I'll find a ghost employee. But traditionally today, most of our clients use it to detect attacks within their networks. If you'd like, I can talk a little bit more about mathematics in detail. But
I think that would be helpful given that that's
sure,
your
no
product.
problem. Sure, no problem. So let's just say it's basically quantitative. It's basically, there's two core components, right? Velocity and the actual throughput. And what we do, I'm just going to give you an example layout. Are you familiar with like mathematical, like Sherwood control charts, or would that be too technical?
Control charts.
So like peak detection, right?
Sure.
So guys, none of this is rocket science, right? We do simple peak detection, right? It's called a Sherwood control chart. And then what we do is the same algorithm you use on like MP3 to denoise them. It's called fast Fourier transforms. We use that then to sort of denoise the signal. And then, of course, you come in the morning at 9 a.m., right? You're going to answer all your emails, but so is everybody else. So, sorry, I thought. So is everybody else. So what we do is we use this thing called, and that's it's seasonality. Apologies. It's used for seasonality, and we then use like Markov chains and for example, IP coming from a known threat actor, and is it a known like attack that I can see? Is it potentially exfiltrated to like another nation state which your business doesn't communicate with normally, like Russia or China? Not that I'm bad mouthing Russia or China, but those kind of things weigh into the decision-making process, and then based on that, we tell you, well, hey, look, this is either anomalous and should be investigated, or does that answer the question?
Thank you. That's very helpful.
And before you go on, I'm going to adjust your microphone a little bit. Hopefully that helps even more.
Should we switch microphones?
Perhaps. I don't know.
I'm happy
Let's
to
hear what
try
you
the
think.
other microphone.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe that's a little better. Because I hear the voice, the sound going in and out. Great.
One of the questions to add to that, right? We're not the first people to do this kind of frequency and volumetric analysis, right? It's from fraud detection. So I think one of the important points is, how are we different from the other people who do it? Superior threat detection. I genuinely believe this technology will detect threats that other people will miss. And we've proven it time and time again. You must remember, when I go into a client, right? The client's got the choice of going with IBM's technology or Cisco's technology or, Darktrace or Palo Alto. So you've got to ask yourself the question, how did we win those clients? And my message to the clients is, don't take it on a name basis. Don't take it on marketing. Try it. Put it side by side and try it next to each other. And I think the big difference between our technology is it wasn't born in a lab. Some professor didn't come up with it at some university kind of thing. We actually been using this technology from 2012 within like the consulting space. It was built in the battlefield. That's why it's not done the way it's, other people do it, but that's also why the results are distinctively better and different.
Thank you.
Okay, I have two questions.
Sure.
First question, can you give us a clear idea of what the typical customer client is that you are talking about? So you're talking about access to markets and really wanting somebody to give you market access. So explain that typical client to us. And then the second question, I'd love to know exactly how you make your money.
Okay, so typical client is large corporate, because it's unfortunately we haven't figured out a way to to lighten it so that we can come in at a price point that's attractive to a small, medium enterprise. We're looking at the large corporates largely because of the price point, but also because of the maturity, right? And the regulatory requirements, etc. So the technology itself is quite feature rich. So it talks to regulatory requirements. As a matter of fact, it talks to like international standards, etc. And that appeals to the corporate user. It's a software as a service model, and B2B, and we largely go through channel partners, and it's cloud-based. So we charge annual reoccurring, we charge monthly reoccurring revenue, rather, sorry. And the contracts are anywhere between 2 and 5 years on a client. What we find is large global clients tend to go with 5 years at a better price. And, the smaller national footprints tend to go for 2 years. Does that answer the question completely?
Thank you.
Perfect.
This increase in better.
Yeah.
Okay. The increase in revenue, I think it was 1.2 in 2023 to 6 million in 2022. How many additional customers is that you're onboarding this year and next year to hit those revenue targets?
Sure. So it's different because every client's network is different, right? If you look at a mine, there's complexities like SCADA technology and OT technology. So clients vary, but total deal value for an average corporate client will be somewhere in the region of 5 million rand. So like 400,000 US dollars. For a smaller client, you're looking at, maybe total deal value of 3, where they're paying about 1.2 million rand monthly recurring revenue. So that's just 100,000.
What do the sales cycles look like to sign the existing customers that you have? How long? How complicated? How much time? And who's running it?
You know what? I'll be totally transparent. It's very long, and that's largely because it's tough to sell, a homegrown local startup product when your competition is Cisco. People on the board, they've heard names like Deloitte, PwC, Cisco, IBM, but when you buy Snode, and from Pretoria, and cybersecurity is such a burning issue at a board level, right? So it's questionable. So sales cycles are typically anywhere, if we're lucky, from 6 months to 12 months. And the actual sales process can be complicated. So we do proof of value assessments so that they can take a look at what the current value is and how much value we add. And then we go into not really tough negotiation cycles, because our technology is very cost efficient right now. I have to be if I want to get market share. But also, we own the entire technology stack, so we don't buy any product from outside. So other than the hardware, which is taken from outside, the entire software ecosystem is built entirely by Snode, right down to the operating system.
So there are a couple of related questions from the audience. Dan Block, how much customization is required per customer, per market, per sector versus entirely plug and play? Thanks, Dan, for the question.
Dan, that's a good question. Okay, so the super interesting on network data, what we look at is we don't do deep packet inspection, which is one of the features of Snode. It can look inside encrypt. We can detect attacks inside encrypted ciphered streams, right? Because what we do is we look at the metadata around the packet. That data is all structured. So it doesn't require much cleaning, etc. But it also in order to secure your applications. So we don't actually, it's the platform, it's cloud-based, but it's not a privacy issue. Because I'm only taking the metadata from your packets.
What's your mission?
My mission is to defend the future. And when I think about the future, I don't just think about, there's many permutations to that. Number one is defend the future. We want to give your business the ability to embrace technology rather than be scared of it, right? Because technology is an enabler. So all the people who are telling you can't do this, you can't do that for security, we want to go the opposite direction. Alternative analysis. No, do it. We'll figure out the security. So that's the one part of defending the future. Second part of defending the future is, while that may be the way we make our money, what I want to use a platform for is solving social evils across Africa. Like, human trafficking, crime. And that's why the platform was used in 2016 to try and predict crime. Platform like this can defend democracies. It can protect elections. It can defend national infrastructure. It's fast, it's easy to deploy, and it comes with a secure pipeline. So when I also say defend the future, I also mean defending the next generation of not just Africans, like the global community.
What's our process? Can I offer some commentary? Or?
Yeah, please. That's your feedback from all the angels, and also, are you interested in investing, or not investing, but passing on the word and helping this company find customers in the U.S. or beyond?
Well, so first of all, congratulations. As an entrepreneur, I know how hard it is, and for the first 8 years of my past decade, everybody told me I'm crazy. So I have so much respect for people who are fighting every day. I think, and so take my commentary with a grain of salt. I want to be helpful. So I think that my understanding is that the technology you have isn't super unique, the IP you have, and I think that's probably a little bit challenging. Also, the process you described isn't super scalable, the consulting and getting clients, so that might be a slower sales cycle. So I suspect those are going to be your challenges entering the global market, especially the US market. I don't know security market that well, but hidden Markov chain and the Fourier transform isn't, cutting edge. So I imagine there will be other players in the US doing that and more. So that's my 2 cents. And I'm happy to be helpful however I can.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think from an access to markets point of view, I really truly get what you're saying. 6 to 12-month sales cycle at. I have one more question and then I'll finish. Sure. The client split, how many of those are South African companies versus global? So do you have South African incorporated mines with global operations? What's your split, South African versus?
It's around about 60-40.
60
Yeah, so some of that footprint is South African companies, yeah, which have global footprints.
Yeah.
And it's largely because we launched in South Africa. That was where we got a large part of our market. Now 40% is actually coming out of places like the Ukraine, Philippines, etc. And these, again, it appeals to the early adopters. So these are fintech players, agri-tech players who are looking for, a more, I want to use the word cutting edge cyber defense system. Yeah.
Cool. So at the risk of repeating anything that you've said, definitely I fully agree. You'll have to really figure out the consulting versus the SaaS part because the consulting definitely is just taking so much resource. And my recommendation would really be simplify your pitch, especially if you're going in at the CEO level. They may not necessarily exactly understand the value. So start with the value first for the organization. That would be my advice, but definitely join Grindstone so we can help you access the market. So.
I mean, interesting business. The fact that you're running profitability with a team of 50 means you've accomplished something, pretty good. And it gives you some flexibility to figure out how to shift from, 50% consulting up to, probably 80% sort of recurring revenue on the product side. That seems like the challenge, and trying to figure out how to get into the hands. And for me, the tech, most of that was lost on me. I think that, Farhad's got a good handle on sort of the tech that, but at least more than I do. So, I'm more interested in sort of what is the sales cycle look like. Me personally, I come from the financial services background and trying to figure out how to solve these problems. And, for banks and folks that are starting to see an increase in, attacks and that threat, I'd be curious to know what kind of, traction we could get with some of those conversations. They need to ask, as well as some folks who do network security in the US. I'm happy to help how I can. And it's interesting to see the business. It's a little bit out of my wheelhouse as far as subject matter though. But congrats.
Thank you.
And I encourage those in the audience on Zoom to get in contact, get in touch. Please put your information into the chat box and we'll make sure we get that over to the team so that you can follow up with future references. Thank you very much for the pitch. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And And go ahead, and Zach. Oh yes, I'm so sorry. Yes, of course. Why don't we take a couple of questions from the audience as well?
Fantastic.
Forgot there's an audience. I'm so used to the Zoom thing. It's just, who are these people? Why are they here?
Won't be able to see. We all know you.
Just a couple of quick things. It was interesting that you mentioned Palantir as not a competitor, but in a similar industry, but they probably were where you were 8 years ago. Why have you not targeted defense departments of Southern African countries? I mean, someone like a CSIR or a Denel is an obvious choice. Why have you not gone the government route? Is it an economics thing? That's number one. Number two, it seems like you're solving a problem which it's important, but it's purely diagnostic. What do organizations do with this information? It's sort of like, here are your threats, but give me the antivirus. So are you doing part two as well, or are you just providing diagnostic services? Because you could charge a lot more if you come with a solution as well as just here are your threats. Those two.
Yeah, so me and you are in the exact same mind space. I'm going to start with the second part of that question. So we realized that was part of the problem. With this increased visibility, people didn't know what to do with that amount of intelligence. So what we've created is we've created a platform called Panthera, which actually automates the defense. What it does is it automatically uses machines to mitigate threats and to put countermeasures in place. In the Navy, like in the military, they call it persistent engagement, and it's a persistent engagement platform. It is not a unique approach. Darktrace has their flavor of it. It's called Antigena, but it most definitely answers that question. So that helps the client actually cope. Otherwise, it's cognitive overload, right? Because the velocity of issues are coming to you so fast, and there's a skills shortage. Exactly. So that technology actually solves that problem. But you're 100%, you hit the nail on the head there. On the first part of your question, which was why not Denel, CSIR? So yeah, we do engage with them. So like today we do a little bit of work for some of the SIUs, and we are trying to sell in there. But if the sales cycle for like a mine is 12 months, the sales cycle for defense is a lot longer. But I also can't tell you too much about the work we do in defense, but like some of the defense agencies in South Africa already run our technology. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, okay, so the question is whether we do real-time analysis. Yeah, this is all real-time analysis. So we can consume data at internet scale, be it voice, video, and we can find the patterns in that data in real time. And the machines also respond. Well, and close. When I say real time, I don't mean on the second, but close to real time. And the machines respond close to real time. So if if you're seeing a cyber attack coming at you, like 5 minutes after the fact is way too late. The machines respond within a matter of split seconds.
Thank you very much for the great presentation, and congratulations on the traction that you've had so far. And I do hope people in the audience and also some of the folks here, myself included, can help you connect with additional customers in the US. Thank you. Over to the next presenter, Greg Chen from Mobiz. Welcome.
Thank you.
Over to you.
Thanks. Good to meet you guys. Hello, everyone. My name is Greg Chen. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Mobiz. Our technology enables marketers to build instant meaningful moments with their customers, because it's actually quite difficult to achieve. As we know, email marketing is oversaturated. Push notification requires an app and it's easily switched off. Targeted and personalized mobile campaigns require coordination between large resources and teams. So standing here, you probably know this SMS is still the most responsive channel. However, it's oversimplified. So how are marketers trying to maximize this channel? They usually try and take it online, and they do this by using multiple tools, several points of integration. They need a landing page builder and probably a URL shortening service, because SMS is quite limited, usually to 160 characters. And of course, most importantly, SMS aggregator integrations. As you can imagine, this is quite a messy and complicated approach that actually, before you even start thinking about personalization or unified reporting. So Mobiz is here to make everything better. We have a zero code user interface that enables marketers to not just build, create, and build, deploy, and analyze hyper-personalized campaigns at scale, whether this is to 10 customers or 10 million customers. Each one of them will receive their own individual and personalized engagement based on the customer data. So why is this important? Well, let me share a real example with you. Well, meet Sarah. She's a coffee shop owner based in downtown San Francisco. She wakes up one cold morning and she realized, wow, wouldn't it be great if I can remind my customers to come grab a cup of coffee from my store before they get to work? Email is not really going to work. I'm not going to read it until they get to work, or maybe not at all. So before she even get out of her bed, she grabs a MacBook, and within seconds, she started to create her first Mobiz campaign of the day. She thinks about the promotion she likes to run, and the audience she likes to engage with. She then selects one of the many beautifully curated templates that's available to her. She then thinks about how to content personalize her engagement based on her customer data and chooses the right call to action. And within minutes, she's created a professional looking hyper-personalized SMS campaigns that can reach her customer instantly. 8 o'clock sharp, her customers receive the individualized offer, reminding them that Sarah knows the exact type of coffee that they like, and just for today, they get $1 off. So by 8:30, her store is flooded with customers, generating the added revenue she sorely missed due to the 2020 pandemic. So it's this type of meaningful engagement that has driven massive return on investment for our clients here in South Africa. Over 2020, they've seen over 4 times more sales conversion than any other digital channel, 20 times more engagement than standard SMS and email campaigns. And during the peak retail season, on average, they've seen over 30% click-through rate. Our technology is validated by some of the most loved brands in South Africa. And that has enabled us to grow 3 times year on year from 1.1 million to just over $4 million in the past year. That represents about 5% market share in South Africa. But in the next 30 days, we'll be launching into the US, where even in its infancy, it's already at a $5 billion market, growing at 20% annually. The US market has always been big. Why now? Because in 2021, 70% of US consumers prefer to receive promotion over SMS compared to any other channel. Of course, we understand there are well-funded competitors over there in that space, the likes of Postscript and Attentive, but none of them have the degree of personalization, customization, or ease of use as Mobiz. And just as importantly, scaling out of Cape Town, we are 3 times more capital efficient than startups based in the US. This allows us to tackle the market from bottom-up approach a lot more efficiently than any other competitors. We're venture backed by some of the best VCs in South Africa, as well as the Alchemist Accelerator, the leading B2B accelerator out of Silicon Valley. We have a diverse and talented leadership team that's super passionate about what we're building, with founders that has more than 15 years experience in mobile software innovation. MailChimp made email marketing accessible to SMBs, and we're doing the same for SMS. We're currently raising a $4 million round to catalyze our growth in the US markets. Thank you.
Congratulations. Great timing on that presentation. Thank you very much, Greg.
Pleasure. Thank you
All
very
right, over to the investors. Who would like to start?
Well, congratulations, incredible growth. So it sounds like your unique angle is to focus on SMEs and provide a easier user interface. Is that a fair characterization?
Yeah, I think SMS specifically in the US market has seen to be a very conversational channel, and Mobiz was born out of disrupting a very saturated SMS space in South Africa. So we like to think that we are a little bit future-proof as compared to US competitors, because we know that once more and more people started using SMS marketing, it's not going to be so conversational anymore. I don't know if you remember in the late 90s, there's a movie called You've Got Mail, right? That doesn't mean anything anymore. We get mail every second, right? So So SMS is not like that in the US yet, but when it get there, it's not going to be a conversational channel anymore. And this is why we think that the best way to utilize SMS as a promotional marketing channel is to be like email, to be able to deliver hyper-personalized content and use SMS purely as a delivery channel.
There are quite a few players in the ecosystem that are
Yeah.
doing this. So is it fair to say that your focus is on building a user interface that is very easy to use for small businesses? Is that
Well,
fair?
It is partially, but it's about easily building a hyper-personalized engagement, and that's hyper-personalized landing page or microsites, right? So it's not just personalizing the SMS copy or the SMS text, it continues to the landing page. So in our example, you saw that every single person that goes to Sarah's coffee shop, seen an engagement. If they like Americano, that's what they see in the engagement. If they like cafe latte, that's what they see in the engagement. That drives better return on investment because they, yeah.
I have two
engagement
quick
behavior.
questions for you. I want to make sure everybody else has time. So one is, how do you personalize? What data do you have that's unique that nobody else does, right? Especially if it's just a phone number. And the second question is, you need to do a lot of small business customer acquisition that requires a large local sales force. How do you plan to do that in the United States?
Okay. So the first question, we use purely first party data, right? So you come with the data, whether it's from your point of sale system or from a CRM. But more interestingly is because we track every single customer's engagement on a per customer level. Therefore, even if you don't have data, you can start learning what the pattern is. So for example, you might offer them, again, Sarah's example, special on a coffee, they can select the voucher they want to choose. So if I select Americano, then into the future, Sarah will know that I prefer Americano. And all that engagement is tracked and recorded on a per customer basis. So they start learning more about more about the customer the longer they use Mobiz. The second question around go to markets. So we tackling it from a parallel approach. We've refined. We're still refining, of course. You always continue refining a digital marketing funnel. So over the past several months, we've collected close to 1,000 SMB signups to our technology, and by May will be a month when we launch into that base will be over 1,000. And this is purely so that we can refine and understand, how do CAC, right, and how do I measure it from a lead basis to an acquisition basis, which is completely different, and which vertical is resonating with the technology so that we can focus our spend on that vertical alone. And then secondly, channel partners. So one of the first things that we're going to do in terms of integration is with Shopify, WooCommerce, and Square. And using those technology and automation plugin that they offer to drive more of a product-led sales strategy. Because every single customer that receives our engagement will see a mo.biz link, of course, with the brand in the front. And the US uniquely is that when you build a customer in a tool like ours, you stay in a tool like ours because you need that verification for TCPA.
Thank you.
So it's as good as the data, right? The primary data, am I understanding correctly that that data would be kept in whichever form or fashion by the SME, by the small business?
Yes.
Right. So the campaign will be as good as the maintenance of the data and the upkeep of the data, as we know.
Yes.
And knowing that small businesses run so many different things. So I have two questions. How do you mitigate for that risk? Because their campaigns will be as good as the upkeep of the data. And secondly, not all small businesses, I'm assuming, would have an automated way of getting the data to be kept updated.
Right.
So if you can just talk to us about that a little.
So we're actually counting on that, right? So we have simplified CRM functionality within our interface. So if you're a small business and you use us purely as your direct customer engagement channel, then you can store your data securely in our interface. So the upkeep on engagement data, everything is recorded automatically. So when you re-engage with the customers, you can already target your customer based on those engagements. But the way small businesses use market engagement these days, more and more of them is kind of moving towards a kind of shared data point. So if you use Shopify, if you use WooCommerce, if you use Wix or whatever campaign builders, These data are then synchronized from platform to platform and not necessarily stored in a single CRM like enterprises. So I don't know if I answered your question.
What's the current sort of pricing model for the different segments, and how does that sort of translate to the revenue figure that's up there?
Cool. So majority of revenue comes from enterprise customers in South Africa, and enterprise customers, we run a small license, so about $1,000 to $2,000 on a monthly basis on enterprises, but majority of revenue is generated from usage. So for enterprise customers, it's usage plus license, but for mid-market and SMBs, it's pure SaaS packaging.
Is that like a per user, or is that a per campaign? What is the usage?
It's per engagement. So this could be, for example, an SMS engagement, but that's not our only channel. It could be per web interaction, the QR code snap, anything like that.
What do sales cycles look like for you?
So for SMEs, it could be one day to a week. Mid-market, usually about a month, 8 months.
One quick comment. Given the fragmentation of your customers, small coffee shops and stores and whatnot, I suspect that most of the gain you have for the improved engagement under your creative is a result of templatization of the creative more than the personalization. Is that a fair statement?
Well, okay, let me answer this and see if I've got your question correctly. So because we launching into the SMB space, we understand that design resources and marketing resources quite limited. So we're actually going to launch with hundreds of curated templates. And the way we've designed these templates based on our waitlist, we see which companies, which verticals is signing up for a waitlist, and we build templates to suit those sectors. And the call to action it's based on research and nurturing and understanding what they want to do. Is it again, is it selling coffee? Is it dollar off coupon? Is it driving traffic in stores? Is it driving traffic to e-commerce? So we know that for us to serve, and it needs to be extremely self-service, but self-service in a way that's super easy. So if you look at our stack, it's more like MailChimp for SMS or the Wix and Squarespace model at the back.
And that's my point, is that having a templatized format helps, small businesses create optimized creative.
Yes.
And that improves performance far more than personalization would, I imagine, at least for the time being.
Yeah, well, we promote personalization. So in our templates, not just visual, right? So there's a mini journey that goes on in a template. So we'll say, well, if you want to sell one type of coffee, sure, but the template already has conditions set in place to inspire you to want to personalize.
Have you done tests removing personalization and seeing the impact?
That's a good test. We haven't done it, but we've done interviews on more than 200 US marketers in terms of the user experience. But in terms of testing that, we haven't done it in the US market.
I'm still on about the small businesses. Talk to us about your retention. I know it's enterprise customers mostly currently. What's the current retention rates?
So our gross retention is about 95%. So enterprise customers, and that's not super special. I mean, it's about 5%. I mean, it sounds ridiculous. They're going to be with us for 20 years. I mean, but again, enterprise, the longer they use us, the more they're entrenched. SMBs at the moment in South Africa, they're quite sticky, and because our price is relatively good. In South Africa, it's about 1,000 Rand. In the US, it's even cheaper, starting at $20 a month.
What is your split currently between SMB and enterprise?
So from a customer base level, it's actually 75% SMBs and 25% enterprise.
Revenue?
But revenue is the opposite. It's 90% enterprise and 10% SMB.
Okay, fantastic. And your fundraising currently is for growth, specifically focusing on the SMB market.
Yes, yeah. And specifically for the US, we are launching in South Africa, but that's through partnership with Telkom.
Okay, thank you.
Have you done any experiments with alternative delivery?
We have, and the way our IP work is it's about creating hyper-personalized landing pages essentially, and that can be delivered over any A2P channel. Think about RCS, MMS, WhatsApp.
I also think about like WhatsApp and Instagram and some of the channels that SMBs are using.
Yeah, so we haven't tested it, but it's part of a pipeline. The reason why we haven't tested it with WhatsApp is because it's not a promotional channel. They don't allow it to run promotions actually. So we've driven a lot of traffic for enterprises that want to use traffic, that want the customer to join their WhatsApp community. But we will. But SMS is just the most obvious.
So there's a question from the audience from Darren Munich. Is in SA in South Africa, will the POPI Act impact your business?
I think the POPI Act will improve our business
Can you
because
tell us what the POPI Act is first?
oh, it's the protection of private information. It's like the TCPA in the States. Yeah. So it's not as strict as the TCPA in the States. I have to add. But to us, we definitely see as a as a positive. We came into the space, want to disrupt the spam markets, right? And this is why we use first-party customer data. If you're spamming someone, you only have the telephone number, and that creates no value can Mobiz bring on if they're actually spamming. So from our perspective, we actually become a lot more viable to channel that doesn't spam. And that's why 100% of our traffic comes from first-party data that is already part of someone's customer base. It doesn't affect our business at all.
You intentionally don't tap into third-party data sources?
Yeah. We actually, well, it is twofold. Oh, sorry. Do Mobiz intentionally not work with third-party data? I would like to say from this year onwards, intentionally, because it's going away. Third-party mobile data is not going to be a thing of the future. But in the past, it's not what we focus on. We focus on collecting our own engagements and using that data to better keep us as a kind of a moat to keep customers using our platform.
Questions from the audience here in Cape Town. Any questions from the audience? Oh, yes, there's a hand raised over there. We're gonna get it sanitized.
Greg, yeah, firstly, Alison from Home Choice says hello. In terms of your revenue split currently, I mean, you're obviously focusing on the States. What is it currently across whatever regions you're operating in? And secondly, I mean, obviously this is, can you just also touch on the landscape in terms of SMS, here versus what it's like in the States?
Okay. So in the States, we haven't officially launched there yet. So we do have a handful of paying customers, more for academic purposes. We want to learn how to serve the customers there. Putting the support infrastructure in place. So I would say the split between South Africa and the US, almost 99.9% South Africa versus 0.1% US. Sorry, your second question was in terms of the difference in the SMS industry in South Africa versus US. It's a bigger difference than what I originally thought it was. In the US, it's a very intimate channel. The infrastructure designed for SMS to be more transactional and community-based, where in South Africa, it's much more bulk. So I'll give you one example. In South Africa, we start with 5,000 per second send on SMSs. In the US, 1 per second. And the fastest is 100 per second. And that's what they released about 2 weeks ago. So it's a different market. And this is also one of the reasons why we're launching into the SMB space, because that is a space where, you know what, I'm not going to send more than 500 messages a month. I've got 300 customers. And so we want to tackle that from a bottom-up approach. I don't know if I answered your question.
Oh, and we have another question back there. Rob Hersoff, you don't mind, getting my germs to you.
I'm the oldest guy in the room. Doesn't mean you have to bring it over here. No, I'm a big fan. Congratulations to what you do.
Hey, Rob.
And you've raised very good money, and your growth of the last 2 years has been superb. So congratulations.
Thank you very much.
For an investor coming in now, they're going to want to see similar growth for the next 2-3 years to get a great return on their money. And I know your business is going to be a success because it's a success already, and they've got you running it. But how are you going to sustain that growth over the next 2 years?
So it's an interesting, when an investor comes in, usually revenue growth and equity growth is in line, and we're gonna keep at that, right? We still want to do a 2x revenue growth. And that were mainly from our South African enterprise sales operation, and we're building quite intensively on that at the moment. Last year we kind of focused on key accounts because with COVID tailwind everything blew up, so you kind of have to just make sure the clients are happy, people getting new customers. But one of the first things we're doing is to unpack our value in the US markets, and we've spoken to many leading investors there to know that what we're going to do that will impact equity value the most is to get our first 1,000 active customers from an SMB space. And funny enough, that will even though that's about 200,000 ARR, that will be more meaningful than getting another $10 million in there from South African enterprise space.
One more question from Zach.
Just disclaimer, we are investors in Mobiz, so this is not a biased question, but you mentioned earlier that SMS has a much higher response rate to email. That's an easy thing to understand, but the only thing that's more responsive than an SMS is a notification. Have you considered doing that? It is very expensive to do, so would you consider doing that after your Series A?
Yeah, absolutely, and not just that, right? Any mobile A2P is part of the discussion. The reason why we haven't focused on that first, and I know a lot of US companies focus on that way before they thought about SMS. SMS is kind of new thing for them. That just kind of blown up in 2020. But the reason being is that and I mentioned this earlier, the app notification is quite segmented. Right? It means that businesses will need to have an app and will hope that you don't switch them off. So it's not a unified platform where SMS is part of the core carrier bearer. That means next to voice, data, and SMS, everything else is optional. And this is why we focus on the most obvious vertical first.
Okay, good.
All right, and we also have a question from Raj Kulasingham in the United Kingdom. How long have you been raising for this round for, and is anyone leading the round?
So we started, we were thinking about raising around when we just completed our Alchemist Accelerator. That's back in October, but our product wasn't really close to launch. So we kind of resumed raise about in February, March. So end of February. And one of our existing investors is the anchor investor at the moment, Havik. So they're putting in $1 million.
And that's a South African investor?
That's a South African investor.
Great. Well, congratulations, Greg, for the incredible traction, and thank you for presenting today. And thanks everybody for your questions in the audience.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks.
And that brings us to the close of this very experimental hybrid session of the Nest, being Zoom bombed and everything else. So I hope everybody on Zoom, please, next month we'll be having another session, but go to untapped-global.com and click on engage, and you will get the entire schedule for upcoming sessions. Every week we have conversations on Clubhouse, where we talk about different topics on investing in entrepreneurship in emerging markets. And once a month, we have pitch sessions like this, where mature market entrepreneurs can pitch to investors from around the world. Thank you very much for coming tonight. Thank you for joining us online, and see you next time. Thank you.